Okay, everybody, you can see the screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for being here tonight, everyone. I am here on behalf of Navtaj, so thank you, Navtaj, for giving me the opportunity to represent you, and I hope I do you justice. And Navtaj is my brother from another mother, and I am excited to host tonight and share with you guys all kinds of fantastic information. So I am Randy Goodman, and I am a broker. I work with off-market and on listed properties as well as with investors, and I'm excited to share with you guys. So obviously, the information here should not be construed as advice. Definitely reach out to your professionals if you're making any decisions. And we have a bunch of professionals here who will be presenting. And so just keep that in mind with any information that you receive, but it'll be incredible information from an extremely knowledgeable person. Always has fantastic networking meetings as well as different programs, which I'll share with you later, all for Canadian real estate investors and beyond. Navtaj has incredible connections, knowledge, and information like no other. So if you're new here and you're not familiar yet, definitely you can send a text out to Navtaj or an email. The phone number is on the bottom, and always find out more about the different programs available. So in Toronto, why are over 80% of homes selling below asking price? I hope I'm not close this. Okay. Well, according to WAHI's newly released July Market Pulse report, bidding for homes in the GTA continued to cool down for the fourth consecutive month in July. The trend persisted despite the Bank of Canada's second rate cut of the year. So they had analyzed 300 neighborhoods with at least 5 home sales last month, revealing that only 14% of areas experienced overbidding, which is a significant drop from the 27% seen in June. Only 4 of those neighborhoods had homes selling at the asking price, while the majority, 82%, were underbid. Okay, so just over 80% of new condo investors in Toronto are losing money on their rentals. So why is this happening? Because their interest rates have gone up and the rental rates aren't covering the mortgage rates. So a Globe and Mail says from January to May this year, there was an average of 20 real estate, rental, or leasing insolvencies in Canada every month. And they expect, obviously, at that calculation for it to be about 240 for this year, which would be 57% higher in 2023, which is crazy, a crazy increase. So investors are getting hit hard, especially if they were purchasing properties in the low interest rate time during COVID. I'm hoping I have a support person here who's admitting people for me because I'm admitting them all. So I hope there's somebody here helping. Okay, Canadian real estate investment cycle. So what happens? We have ebbs and flows, right? It goes up and down. Speculators, builders, sellers, they become desperate as power of sales flows surge and property prices plummet, making bargains plentiful. So we're in one of those downfalls, which is a great time to buy. And, you know, it's going with the ebb and flow. So now is a great time to buy, but you are going to see a lot of distressed properties coming up, especially in the next year or two. Sorry, it's not moving. Okay. So the July report, monthly transactions went up over over June, from July to June, but year over year, it was down 3%. Average sold price was down from June to July, and it was down year over year, but not down so much. It's only down a little bit, so it's pretty much the same as far as the sold price goes. And so not too much of a change there. In the Greater Toronto Area, the July market report, a little bit more information here. The average sold price was down. So month over month, it was down almost 5%, but year over year, it's just about the same, just changing, going down about 1%. And you can see the details on the different types of homes: detached, semi, freehold, condo, etc. So the number of transactions, which means a buy or a sell, went down month over month. So it was down in July, which we would expect because of the summer, but because the Bank of Canada rate, the interest rate, went down as well, that number could move. So I think you see it a little bit here in the year over year change with the 2.7% increase. Calgary and Edmonton, and thank you for everybody who's in the meeting from out of town. Real estate market report. So Calgary detached homes in July, sales dropped by 8.2%. Active listings increased 12.13%, and the benchmark sale price was up 11.19%. In Edmonton, the single family detached homes in July were the number of sales increased by 22.79%. New listings rose 6.4%, and the average sale price went up 7%. Employment over there is seasonally adjusted. In Alberta, it's at 2.52 mil, a decrease of 0.17% month over month. The unemployment rate in the province was at 7.1%, which is up a little bit year over year. And the average weekly earnings were 2.9% year after year, or year over year, sorry. Canadians face financial ruin as insolvency rates skyrocket to pre-pandemic highs. So they increased by 11.3% in May compared to the same month last year. And the number of personal filings reached over 12,000, which is the highest monthly volume seen since October 2019, before the pandemic. This breaks down to an average of 393 filings by Canadians per day, which is just crazy. Conrad Black sued his old friend for selling his ancestral home. So he had a home that he's suing his old friend $12 million after he sold Black's ancestral home. Someone bought the Bridle Path Mansion in 2016 for $14 million after the CRA found Black owed $15 million in unpaid taxes. Black hasn't seen a dime to this. So there's all kinds of funny stuff going on. Hundreds and thousands of Canadians are leaving Toronto for other parts of Canada. In the past 2 years, you guys have probably seen this in Alberta. All the Ontarians are going to Alberta or Nova Scotia and some to BC. In the past 2 years, 220,000 more Canadians have abandoned Ontario than arrived, according to Stats Can. Okay, can you purchase tax lien properties for pennies on a dollar in Canada? Well, if you don't know, then you definitely have to take one of Navtaj's seminars, because he will teach you all about it. The next one is September 17th, that evening, and you can get tickets on the website, or you can text Naftaj directly there as well. And if you guys want to take a picture of this, feel free to take a picture. If you want to take a picture of any of the slides, feel free, please. Okay, Canada's rich or getting richer. StatCan report finds with 90% of Canadian wealth now in the hands of homeowners. So are you a homeowner? Canadian real estate. A condo for sale. So you're going to see how the condo market's getting hit here. Condo for sale at $840,000 will cost $5,700 a month to carry, with 20% down at say 6.84% interest, or it's also offered for rent at $3,250 a month. So if somebody's carrying a property for that much and only taking in $3,250, they got to be able to wear it out until the market gets better, and they could be losing a lot of money. So you got to be careful here with your numbers. Okay, 100,000 per home needed to fund infrastructure. It includes funding for all resources such as public transit, roads, water lines, schools, fire halls, or recreational facilities. The Canadian Infrastructure Bank estimated the average cost of infrastructure needed to support housing likely exceeds $100,000 for each newly built home. This includes funding for resources such as I mentioned, and the municipalities are often reluctant to either incur debt or pass along capital costs through property tax hikes or for political reasons. I think I need a drink of water. Okay. In some cases, growth is stifled by municipalities insisting developers shoulder the financial burden by prepaying for the full capital cost of long life infrastructure. The report noted there is also municipal opposition towards leaning on the private sector to deliver public infrastructure, especially if it involves transferring ownership or control. So here you can see development charges for a single family home. This is crazy. Crazy. So in 2004, it's just over $5,000 for development charges. Today, this year, it's almost $47,000 to be able to close up on a new property, potentially. Okay. Canadian real estate development charges for single family homes. Here you can see 1980, it was about $1,100, and 2024, 110,000. So there's like quite a discrepancy there. Why did it go up so high? What caused this to happen? Canadian mortgage delinquencies expected to rise. Lenders have two major red flags when they're assessing risk: size of debt and length carried. With mortgage lenders seeing both of these changes, it's not surprising there's a regulatory concern. We expect payment increases to lead to a higher incidence of residential mortgage loans falling into arrears or defaults, reads the risk report. Okay, will 30-year mortgages for new homes in Canada lower monthly payment and boost construction? What do you think? Okay.
Well, not really.
Not
It
really.
will, yeah, because you just mentioned size of debt and the length of the debt. It's scary. 30 years is an extended term, so you're just extending the limit to pay off the debt.
They are.
So,
And they're causing more
so,
interest, but
so I mean, it's a hard sell for any bank or financial institution to a consumer. Say, okay, why would someone be logged in for 30 years rather than he can go for 25 years, right? Because if they want to be debt free, they will be adding 5 more years to their mortgage carrying.
they
Right?
will be.
Just
Absolutely, I agree. But they will also be lowering their monthly payments so that they can get into the market, right? So it will help, like there's pros and cons to everything. So it will help on one end, but then they will end up paying more in the long term. So yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you. For sale, proceeds of crime properties. So here's a few that were taken, forfeited to His Majesty the King in the right of Ontario as proceeds of crime property. So there's a bunch. And there's more where those came from. Milton homeowner who purchased at the peak of 2022 is facing a $436,000 loss. Now, I'm sure this isn't the first one you guys have heard of, but multiple situations where people purchased in the peak of the market, which was also the loveliest interest rates out there, but maybe not thinking so much of what happens if the interest rates go back up. How are they going to get hit? And some people are getting hit pretty hard. So unfortunately, this property ended up selling. I mean, fortunately for the purchaser, unfortunate for the seller, but you can see how much the value decreased. And, I'm sure in the renewal process, they couldn't afford the mortgage when the numbers changed. So here's another one. Brampton homeowner purchased at the peak of 2022 and is losing $430,000 on the house. Same kind of situation. It's very unfortunate for the homeowner, but somebody out there got a great deal. Okay, here we have the lovely Jyoti Chaudhary, who is so brilliant. She's a real estate lawyer. She has her law degree in 3 countries. She's in India, she's in Canada, and she's also in the UK. Very smart lady, full of knowledge. And Jyoti, love to hear what you have to say, my dear.
Thank you, Randy, for your lovely introduction. Today, I will be talking about breach of contract, on which I touched briefly during the last meeting last month. Today, I will be talking about breach of contract by the seller. As everybody knows, an agreement of purchase and sale is a written contract between a seller and a buyer for the purchase and sale of a particular property. And there are 2 parties to it, and either the buyer or the seller can fail to close the contract. And this can be due to a lot of reasons, and it can happen in a variety of situations. Now, what happens when the the seller does not complete the contract? This could happen if the seller fails to provide vacant possession, meaning that at the agreed upon closing date, the property is not vacant. It is either not free from furniture, personal belongings, garbage, and tenants, in which case it's a relatively easier fix. The lawyers and the realtors often negotiate some form of compensation for the buyer, or alternatively arrange for the seller to pick up what was left behind. But the bigger issue is if there are tenants that have not vacated. This is a much more significant breach and often results in the transaction not being completed. Now, what happens in a scenario where the seller has breached the contract? What remedies are there for the buyers in this kind of a situations? Buyers typically have more potential remedies available if a seller breaches a real estate contract. While the buyer will seek to recoup their deposit from the seller, they may also seek monetary damages from the seller. So it's not just the deposit that the buyer is seeking to recover, they're also seeking to recover monetary damages from the seller. And in some cases, they may also seek specific performance by attempting to compel the seller to follow through with the deal, or to deal with an issue that is preventing them from completing the contract. If the case goes to court, the court can order specific performance if the property is unique in some ways to the purchaser. So basically, when the seller is at fault for breaching the deal and they back out of a deal due to regrets about selling the property, or where they feel like they accepted too low of a bid and could obtain a higher one, what can happen? Here are some potential consequences. Damages. The buyers can seek damages, meaning that the buyer can sue the seller for damages, such as an increase in market value of similar properties in a rising real estate market. Of course, these days one doesn't come across the situation, but it can happen during times when the market is going up, like it was in 2022 and a little bit in 2021. But the important point for the buyer to do is to be able to prove the specific monetary amount of these damages. The other remedy that the buyer can seek is an order for specific performance from the court. That triggers the completion of the transaction. So if the seller is not willing to, complete the contract, the court can order specific performance, especially if the buyer can prove that the property is unique and that a substitute is not readily available. Because this is subjective perspective, this is usually very challenging to prove in courts. And courts have tended to continue to award specific performance to purchasers, particularly the case with respect to residential properties, or as one judge noted, few purchases are as important as a family home. Now, how does the court calculate the damages to be awarded to the buyer? So in one case, Judge Corbett stated, if the contract had been carried out, for example, the purchaser would be the owner of a house worth $325,000 rather than having a property worth $300,000. It would, in my view, be unreasonable, not be unreasonable to calculate the loss on this basis at $25,000. So this was one view of the judge. But then he also considered a method which has less appeal than the above method to the buyers, namely that the difference in the increase in value of the defendant's property when compared with the plaintiff's property might be considered. The rise in the plaintiff's property was from $190,000 to $300,000, namely $110,000, and the defendant's increased by $115,000. The defendant therefore experienced a greater increase in value, which put the damages at $5,000. So it all depends on how the property is appraised or valued, and the value of the property at the time of breach is of great significance in assessing damages. Also, if the case is in the court at the time of the trial, it will be assessed as well. What is the value of the property? So this is my take today, brief, but just a pointer to the sellers not to, get carried away by rising prices and to, not complete the contract. That is not a good way to go. Just like buyers have to complete their part of the transaction, so do the sellers. Thank you, Randy, for allowing me to speak.
Well, thank you so much, Jyoti, for a fantastic presentation. Sorry, guys, if you have noise in the background, just keep yourself muted if you don't mind. And yes, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
If you guys have any questions, and you can take a picture of this, if you have any questions for any of our experts, please take a picture of their page, reach out to them. You can send them a text and ask them questions there. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure you guys are able to access us and be able to ask any questions that you need to ask. Okay, this thing is blocking. Okay. Can you guys still see the title?
Actually, I'm not able to see the video. I'm able to hear. I just lost
Yes,
the
we can
video.
see it.
You lost the video?
Yeah, but
Okay.
one sec. I think maybe now I got it back. Sorry about that. I hope they were able to see me talk, but that's okay so long as they heard
Yep.
me talk.
They heard you talk. I had your screen on so they could take a picture of you, so don't worry about that.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, it depends on how they were watching. So Canadians have more debt. Thank you again. Canadians have more debt than savings. The majority of Canadians now have more debt, and I'm sure you guys have heard this before. StatCan says, here's why the wealth gap is widening. The wealthiest 20% of Canadians recently accounted for more than 2/3 of total net wealth in Canada. Okay. 56.7% of Toronto condos owned by real estate investors. The newly updated Canada Housing Stats program shows over 37,000 condo apartments, or 56% of all units built since 2016, are owned by real estate investors. Many experts argue that the rise in investor-owned properties can lead to less protections for tenants and is part of the reason for the ever-increasing rent prices. I guess it depends on what year the condo was built and a few other things. So your detached home in Toronto will be $2 million in 2034. What do you think of that? So if we look at the projection here since 2014, you see it's constantly rising. There's ebbs and flows, of course, but it's constantly on the rise. So they predict, and that's a pretty steep prediction and pretty high growth rate, but you never know. Let's see what happens. Okay, mortgage renewal wreckage in Oakville. Oh boy. Okay, so listed at 1.7, bought in 2021 for 1.7. So we're still talking possibly the high range, like the height of the market. With financing from River Rock, the owners ran into trouble and allegedly stopped paying taxes and defaulted last December. Their renewal is now at 10% on the outstanding amount with a whopping $11,000 in interest alone. So now they've started the power of sale process on the property. So what happens now? What do you think this property is going to sell for? Well, we've seen some examples before. We don't know. We don't know. Depends on what the lender wants to settle for. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go down, but it could go way down. Pre-construction condo meltdown in Mississauga. So here we have a property listed for $400,000. It was purchased for $595,000. You would expect a 600 square foot condo in Square One, Mississauga, on a high floor to sell for at least $550 to $600 last year, maybe $700. So now it's terminated at $540 and relisted at $400,000. So this is a big hit. What do we think it's going to sell for? We don't know. Okay, so I introduced myself before. I am a real estate broker with Remax Realtron, and I'm going to share with you guys some info. So market info, home sales are up 3.3% year over year. New listings are up by 18.5% year over year. And July sales and new listings were lower compared to June. New listings were, oh, sorry, I said that part already. July, the average sale price was down by almost 1% over last July. And the average selling price went up slightly compared to June 2024. More affordable mortgage payments will benefit from this. People will benefit from the substantial buildup in inventory as well as the lower interest rates. Sorry, I got something in my eye. Okay, so I want to see if I can share a different screen with you guys. I'm just going to share this screen. You guys can see this one. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Coach Inn in Owen Sound. So this property is an exceptional investment opportunity, 2 hours north in Owen Sound. It's asking 3.38 million. The Coach Inn is a historical landmark in the heart of Owen Sound and houses about 50 rooms on 3 floors for short and long-term tenants. It's actually quite a unique building. Plus it has a long-established pub restaurant on the main level. So it's not just a building, it's a piece of living history dating back to the 1800s. The government is investing 13 billion to the region in projects that are bringing more jobs and creating a large housing and rental demand. At 3.38 million, the distinguished property is a fair market price with a cap rate of about 6.35. Area cap rates are about 5.2 to 6.2%. It stands centrally at a key intersection in the downtown core, spanning just under half an acre with 15,500 square feet. It includes ample parking and is strategically situated close to one of the 5 Great Lakes. Zone C1 commercial, it presents diverse development possibilities for additional floors and units. With a net operating income of about $215,000, the approximate revenue of $450,000, the building consistently reaches full capacity with its ongoing renovations and maintains a waiting list, underscoring its strong market demand. Looking ahead, the Coach not only promises substantial immediate returns, but also offers significant development potential with future revenue projections in the multi-millions with a possible 10 to 14 story project. If you or someone you know is interested in Owen Sound area, it's a fantastic area, tons of great history. We have a bunch of other commercial mixed-use properties in the area. Plus, I have a whole whack of properties in a bunch of other small towns, which are great for building community and business in these areas that are for sale. So reach out to me directly, take a picture of this or the other page, and feel free to text me or call me. Yes, you can text that number. Stop sharing and go back to our other one, which is here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. Sweet and short, to the point. And okay, why don't they teach financial education? Subjects that should be mandatory in schools. I'm sure you guys can think of other topics as well, but there's a lot of topics when you get into real life that you realize I wasn't taught in school and we should have been, right? So I think more real life information needs to be taught to kids in school. So moving on, how to avoid capital gains tax in your retirement portfolio. So for wealthy Canadian business owners, real estate speculators, and anyone with an average income of over 1.4 million must now pay tax on 2/3 of any gains over 250,000 in a year instead of half. Capital gains are accrued when an individual sells an asset, such as a stock, property, or business. This inclusion rate is a portion that is taxed at the filer's marginal rate. For the average retirement investor with a good tax strategy, there are tools available to avoid paying a capital gains tax at any rate. And this brings us right into our next pro here, Jerry Hogenhout. He is a CPA, CGA, CFP, AMP, like, isn't he? I think he has 5 different licenses, which are there in the brackets: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, private equity, mortgages, and insurance. And he is, of course, a CPA. So, Jerry, if you're there, please talk to us about our taxes or whatever you want to share today.
Okay, I am here. Thank you, Randy. Thanks for the introduction. And welcome everyone. Yeah, well, you touched on it. I'm glad you brought up that education in school thing, because yeah, that's always an interesting topic. I just want to share that I went to a school board once and I said, I'd really like to come and talk to your class, your high school class. I said I would do it for free. I didn't want any money. Just want to, teach kids some basic financial tax stuff. And they literally refused me because it wasn't in their curriculum. So they basically said, no, you cannot talk to our kids because it's not in the curriculum. So interesting point you brought up, and that was, hit home to me. And you also brought up the capital gains, those damn capital gains. Yes, 2/3. What does that mean to me as an accountant? Well, it makes our job harder to save tax, minimize tax. But the one thing, the one thing that has kind of opened, just a topic of discussion is when people do buy real estate, the question we always get asked as accountants, should we own it personally? Should we own it corporately? And there's a whole bunch of reasons beyond this topic tonight, why we would hold it in personal ownership or corporate ownership. But this 2/3 capital gains inclusion, as some of you may know, it applies to all of the capital gains in a corporation, but the 2/3 inclusion only applies to the capital gains over 250,000 personally, which means we do get a little bit of favorable tax treatment if we own that property personally. So it doesn't mean that we automatically own that property personally. There's a whole bunch of things we need to consider. But it just gave us a little more reason to think about owning the property personally instead of corporately. And another thing that 2/3 capital gain inclusion really messes up things that really not a lot of people talk about is estate planning. We all are real estate investors. We want to buy real estate. We want to build up our portfolios. And in a perfect world, if everything goes well, we build wealth, and ultimately we want to transfer that wealth to the next generation. Well, that wealth gets transferred not without tax consequences. And now when we build wealth in our lifetime and transfer that to our beneficiaries, we have a bigger tax problem because on death, we're deemed to have sold everything. I'll explain it this way. Every asset we own has a fair market value calculation as well as an adjusted cost base. That's everything, like our house, our car, everything we have has an ACB and a fair market value. So as I think I've mentioned before, when spouse number 1 passes, assets go to the surviving spouse at the adjusted cost base. When the second spouse passes, we have to deal with the deemed dispositions at fair market value. And that triggers the capital gains or the tax consequences. And now we have to include 2/3 inclusion. And again, with people that are building up big assets, big estates, that first 250 that we can only do 50-50 inclusion, that gets eaten up pretty quick. So it's created a lot of estate planning problems, not problems, just realities, things that we need to talk to clients about, because now their tax implications are that much more when we talk about their estate planning. So anyway, so that's certainly, something that we have to deal with. Hopefully, if the next election comes around, who knows, maybe that gets put back to 50-50. I don't know. Poilievre's been pretty quiet on that, whether he'll reverse that. But it's certainly, to me, a bad policy. I think everybody's just at the end of their rope with the taxes. So to throw an additional inclusion tax on top of everything that we already deal with, I don't think goes very well. And plus, capital can move. So if you tax the rich too much, you're just going to lose any of their tax dollars, because they have the means and mechanisms and the money to pay people to properly structure them offshore. So just my opinion, I thought that was a pretty bad policy. But anyway, I also want to comment. I got back from Victoria, BC last night, and wow, there's so much construction going on there. I can't believe it. It's a boom out there. There's so much construction. Prices are reasonable. Not saying they're not expensive, but certainly compared to here. So my eyes were opened pretty wide to see all the new construction. And it's mostly senior. A lot of seniors are going out there just cashing out, because your dollar goes a little farther out there. I remember we were driving around, and my friend, and we go up to the top of the hill where you're overlooking the valley, and there's just beautiful houses up there. And this one house had a for sale sign, and just a gorgeous house on top of a big, hill, and just beautiful. You'd think that'd be a $6 or $7 million house. It was 2.5 million. And I'm like, Jesus, that's pretty. I mean, it's an expensive house, don't get me wrong, but reasonably priced compared to what you would get in Toronto or surrounding areas. But anyway, it was an eye opener. It was a great trip out there. And I noticed we have a new friend from Alberta, and I welcome that person here. We're in Alberta too, and we do a bunch of investing in Alberta. And Alberta is the hot spot. The cap rates work. The price per door works. The landlord laws. They're very landlord friendly. No land transfer tax. No provincial sales tax. I can go on and on. And I'm finding a lot of my clients too are just looking to go there, not necessarily to work in the oil and gas fields. They're just going there because, if in this day and age, you have a Wi-Fi signal, internet, and you can work anywhere. So the Alberta's booming. The East is, booming too. Toronto's just becoming more and more expensive, pushing people out. So your comment about people are moving, outside of Toronto certainly is true. And another thing that really we're very busy with in our tax practice is not only talking to people about leaving Toronto, but talking about leaving Canada. Lots have never been busier with people inquiring or restructuring them to leave Canada. And as real estate investors, if that is something on our agenda, it creates a problem, because when we leave Canada for tax purposes, we have to sell all our assets. So once again, we'd have a deemed disposition or an actual disposition of those assets. So when we talk to people about leaving Canada, either permanently or spending 6 months, in the sunny South, there's some significant tax implications that come into play. And it's, do you go now? Do you wait for the market to get a little hotter to sell your assets if you are thinking of leaving the country? But certainly a lot of talk in that area, lots and lots, more than I've ever had and more than I really imagined. So and not only I was sitting beside a 24-year-old last night in the plane, and here's a kid. He was working in Jasper, and they got burnt out, as we all know. And here's a 24-year-old kid wondering whether he should stay in Canada to live or to move outside of Canada, simply because of all the costs and everything else. So it's not a topic of conversation just for the senior citizen crowd. The young kids are thinking that way too. So Anyway, that's it for now. So thank you, Randy. You're doing a great job hosting. And I thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. And I look forward to listening in and jumping in when I can. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you,
Hi,
Jerry.
Jerry, I have a question. Hi, Jerry. When is a
Hello.
good time
Hi.
to contact you? I tried to contact you a number of times.
Oh, try me tomorrow. I'm in my office. My
Sure.
cell number. Call me on my cell.
After
519
4.
519
Okay, not
942 0220. I'll put it in the chat.
sure.
If I
Thank
can
you.
figure this
Thanks.
thing out, I'm on my iPhone here and not my main
Thank you.
computer. So I'll try and
Nice.
figure it out and put myself, but I'm in my office tomorrow, but feel free to call me.
Sure.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Moving forward. Thank you so much, Jerry, for that great information. And again, guys, remember, please reach out to the experts directly if you have any questions. We're gonna try to keep this meeting short tonight, but we still have a lot of slides to go through, so, okay. Here we have the different rates that you can see since 1975. It was 8.7 in 1975. In 1981, it went to over 19%. Crazy. I remember those days. And then, of course, it went up and down, went up and down. And then as we get closer to our current year, we see some stability over the last many years, actually. You know, in the 5, 6, 7% range. So you can see how it's changed over the years. Okay, Bank of Canada policy rate schedule for this year. You can see it here. You can Google it. You can take a picture if you want. But the first interest rate cut after 4 years was in June, and then we've seen little increments. So they do expect more, but we never know. 76% of Canadian mortgages are due for renewal by 2026. Canada to see 76% of mortgages renew. In that year, there's a 1 in 7 concern that they won't be able to. There's been a lot of discussion on rate renewals, and like I said, big concern. They estimate 76% of mortgages debt is up for renewal by the end of 2026 as of February 2024. That's what they said. So the number could have changed slightly by then or since then. They warn the impact will be highest for those with significant debt, especially those who renewed at record low rates between 2020 and 2022. Banks are expecting a wave of mortgage defaults. Economists say a credit crunch could hurt us all, which means people are really diving into their credit because they just don't have the money. Most Canadian mortgages set to renew in 2026. You can see this chart where it shows you the percent of mortgages that are set to renew in the different years. So 2024 is probably about 14, 15%. 2025 in the 20s, the most being in 2026, as we mentioned. And then, of course, like a pyramid, it starts to come down again. But these are all the effects of the low interest mortgages coming to renewal. Next, do we have the lovely David here on the call with us? Because I'm not looking at everybody.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hey, okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you, David. So thank you for coming on. David Grossman is our mortgage expert with Rock Your Mortgage, and can't wait to hear what you have to share with us tonight, David. Please take it away.
Okay, thanks very much, Randy. Good to see you hosting tonight. Nice to be with you all this evening. So rate reductions are the big question, and indeed rates have started coming down, and we're expecting further reductions this year. There is a practically 100% chance of a rate reduction on September 4th. About the 90% chance that it's going to be a 0.25% reduction, and about a 10% chance of a a full half a point reduction. Unemployment figures are up, so there's a kind of a push on now to start dropping rates a little bit more aggressively, which is a nice thing to hear, that there's going to be some rate relief around the corner. Of course, it does take some time before people really start to see the benefit of that, before their mortgages start to renew. And also, it takes about a year for a rate reduction to really start to impact the economy. So, it's going to be another 6 months or so before we really see the benefit of some of these drops that we've seen in the last few months, and some rates have dropped considerably. And so there's good opportunities out there. And I was really amazed, Randy, looking at this condo in Mississauga.
Mhm.
I think you said 700,000, and now it's 400. So yeah, that's a exciting
Crazy.
opportunity for some people to get into the market. Yeah, and so that's the story on rates. I'll just speak briefly, because I know we want to keep the presentation short, to the different types of lending. A lending, B lending, and C lending are what it's known for. A lenders is basically prime lending with a bank. As most of you would know, if you can prove your income, if you have excellent credit, then you might qualify for a bank mortgage. If let's say you cannot prove income, the B lenders are lenders that they are institutional lenders, so they charge a bit more than banks, and they've been around for decades. And they really got into the business because there's a self-employed market out there where people cannot prove their income to the bank's satisfaction. Sometimes if they're self-employed, the first thing that happens when you go to the bank is the bank says, show me your tax returns and your notice of assessments. Well, if you're self-employed, you might be doing very well in your business, but you might not look great on paper, especially where tax returns are concerned. And the fact is that banks are sort of in bed with CRA, and so they reward you for reporting lots of income and paying lots of taxes. But if you're one of these people who are looking for opportunities to minimize income, and that's one of the benefits of being self-employed, is that you can either keep your money in your
You're breaking up, David.
company, or some people will off out there. Their job is to make sure that you are strong enough to service the debt, and that's their responsibility. So they will look at alternative forms of credit worthiness. For example, they will look at your business bank statements, and if the deposits are healthy, you can qualify with a B lender, and they won't even ask you for tax returns or notice of assessments in many cases. And finally, C lenders are private lenders, and private lenders step in. Usually it's for short-term bridge type of financing, where maybe you've got a credit issue, maybe you're trying to buy a property that is in a state of disrepair and you want to fix it up, and then you can either sell it once it's fixed up, or you can refinance into institutional money. So private financing lenders use common sense. If the equity is there, if it looks like you know what you're doing, and there's a good exit plan, because they don't want to be in it forever either. They usually want to get in, help you do whatever it is you need to do, and then exit the loan. And that's basically A, B, and C lending, and also the story on rate. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so if you have any questions, please take a picture of this page.
Okay, so that's really all. That's all I have. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely keep your questions. Please text David directly and get in touch with him directly. So take a picture of this page. Thank you so much, David, for the great information, as you always provide fantastic information on the market and on the rates and whatnot. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever in regards to mortgages, please reach out to him. He's another wealth of information.
Thank you, Randy. Great job hosting tonight.
Thank you. Okay, so the Bank of Canada made its first rate cut of 25 basis points in June, and the rate came down to 4.75%. In July, we had another cut of 25 basis points, so it's down at 4.5%. And the Canadians are anticipating more cuts, which we hope will happen. And if you want to chat about that, reach out to David. I know he'd love to talk to you. So you want to know about the real estate market, Navtaj is right there to help you. Okay, so I think this thing keeps covering. Okay, mortgage saving options. How much could increasing your payment frequency save on your mortgage? Well, it's interesting to find out. If you look on the chart there at the bottom of the screen, you will see that if you speed up your payments, the number of payments that you make in a year, it also speeds up how quickly you pay, but it also reduces your interest costs. So yes, it might cost you a little bit more week to week or month to month or bi-weekly, whatever you choose, but you're definitely going to save on the interest. So there's a game there. You definitely want to talk to an expert like David to figure out what's the best option for you as far as the mortgages go. You know, what you can afford, which route you guys should take, and figure out the right plan for you, because it's different for everybody.
So what's the difference between the semi-monthly and bi-weekly?
Sorry, what's the difference?
Yes,
It means, so if you're paying monthly, you're paying once every month.
bi-monthly, semi-monthly and bi-weekly.
Semi-monthly, you'd
Semi-monthly.
be paying twice a month. And then if it's accelerated bi-weekly, you're gonna pay every 2 weeks, which gives you some extra payments in the year. And then weekly, of course, is the 2 payments in the year. So I hope that helps. But you can definitely speak to David and get more information on that if you guys need. Thank you for your question. The Greenbelt, Ontario's Greenbelt, the world's largest protected farmlands, forests, wetlands, rivers, and lakes. 2 million acres of protected land work together to provide us with fresh air, clean water, fantastic local food and drink, and world-class outdoor recreation and tourism experiences. You guys can keep reading there, but it forms a belt around the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So if you look on the map, you'll see all that greenery. And we like to save it and keep it so that we have some. Okay, first-time home buyers, 25-year versus 30-year mortgage. This is an example. If you purchased a place for $500,000 with a down payment of 5%, interest rate of 5.2%, what you're going to pay with a 25-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage. And you can see, even with those 5 years, you're spending so much more on your mortgage costs. So it's great to have the lower payment. So again, you really want to talk to the professionals. If you have somebody, great. Otherwise, I would chit chat with David and have that conversation and find out what is the best option for you, because there's always pros and cons to whatever decision that you make. Okay, City of Calgary launches a secondary suite incentive program. Secondary suite incentive program is open for applications. There's the link. Take a picture of this page if you want the link and save it for later. The secondary suite incentive program is a component of Home is Here, the City of Calgary's housing strategy. It provides a qualifying homeowner up to $10,000 to cover a portion of construction costs to develop and register a safe secondary suite. The incentive applies to suites built within the main dwelling, not for backyard or detached suites. So this is great. Applications are limited to one person and you must own the property through the entire process. Okay, the city mulls the $10,000 incentive program to encourage residents to build additional rental units in their homes. Cambridge wants to use part of the $13 million the city is eligible to receive from the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund for a new incentive program that could offer up to $10,000 to residents who complete the construction of additional rental units on their property. So the cost of constructing an additional rental unit ranged from $3,600 to $486,000, with an average cost of just over $47,000. Feel free to take a picture of any of these slides. Okay, if you have to sell a condo in Vancouver today, you have to discount back to 2016 to 2018 prices to move it. Sounds familiar here in Toronto too. Pretty crazy. Okay. Modern Living Suite Relief. The growth in the number of investor occupants is being bolstered by government incentives that encourage homeowners to add secondary suites to their property. The goal being to increase the supply of affordable housing. Ontario renovates secondary suites forgivable loan program, which provides forgivable loans up to $75,000 to homeowners who want to create or renovate secondary suites in their homes. That's fantastic. Fantastic for growth. Okay, why invest in GTA real estate? Why? Well, it's constantly growing. You can see the projectile. You know, no matter what kinds of ebbs and flows we have, it is constantly on the upswing. Fraudster Jim Pellerin sentenced to 3 years in prison in Carleton Place house flipping swindle. So he worked in the financial sector for 5 years. Sorry, he was barred from working in the financial sector for 5 years after he served his sentence. He's 68 years old, a prominent local real estate investor and consultant who authored multiple books on the subject, was found guilty of 27 counts of fraud after a judge ruled he intentionally misled his lenders. Buyer beware. Always make sure you are checking out your investments, whatever they are. If you want to take a picture of this, you're welcome to. This guy lost $275,000 in deposits. He had 21 different promissory notes with his lenders, guaranteeing them 20% return on their $30,000 investment. This guy was just totally trying to swindle people. So be wary. This guy, Greg, ran a massive Ponzi scheme, and he built $317 million from 930 investors. Like, holy mackerel. When your friend tells you this is a great investment and you go, yeah, hundreds of people have done it too, buyer beware. So he orchestrated a massive Ponzi scheme and raised over $270 million on false pretenses. That's crazy. So again, buyer beware. This is a site, take a picture of this, that you can check to see whether an investment has been reported before, or if there's anything on it. So if you want to take a picture of that, you can always double check before you make an investment into anything. Okay, whistleblower gets a $300,000 reward from the OSC for providing information that helped identify misconduct. The whistleblower program offers protections for people who come forward with information about potential violations of Ontario securities law. Examples would include illegal insider trading, tipping, fraud, misleading corporate disclosure, or financial statements and trading-related misconduct. It awards up to $5 million for tips that lead to successful enforcement action. Take a picture if you want. Okay, Masterclass Live. Want to learn from Navtaj directly? Take a picture of this. Reach out to him directly through the WhatsApp or texting, or go to the website. You can register there as well. There is so much information here. I've taken courses myself through him and learn all the how-tos. Discount properties, auctions, tax liens, power of sales and foreclosures, evaluate a property, virtual wholesaling, hard money lenders, and more. Okay, Eyewitness Canadian Real Estate Investors Field Training, date still to be announced. Oh, there I am in one of those pictures. So much information, such great information. If you want to be part of it, again, take that number, text it, WhatsApp it, and get into a class. So the next meeting will be held on September 10th, which is the second Tuesday of every month. Next one, September 10th. Please join us. And thank you for being here with me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all our presenters. Thank you to you guys. You've been awesome and amazing. And remember, if you have any questions, please reach out to the expert that you wanted to ask the question of.
Thank you, Randy.
And I hope to see you guys again.
Thanks, Randy. That was a lovely presentation.
You guys good? Did you learn a lot?
Great presentation.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks, Randy. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Bye,
great
Randy.
Bye, sweetie.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye, guys. Thanks, Bud.
Good night.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the presentation.